Okay, short reviews for June 1st, and this is a short one. One of the shortest ones so far this year because there just isn't a lot from the first week of June that I really wanted to talk about. And the stuff that is here, well, we'll see. Uh, we kind of started in a weird place because, I really like this band, Witch Hazel. This is I think, Lancashire, England based uh, heavy rock throwback sort of proto heavy metal group who they obviously have references from the new wave of British heavy metal and just 80s British heavy metal in their sound in general. And what that means is their sound is just instantly recognizable. It is a more modern take, which is maybe more dismal in its mood or pastoral in its reverence, however you want to put it. But it's a high quality band that have been around for a long time, and they have quite a lot of vision here in their fourth full length. Uh, the problem is that when every time I picked it up, and this has been a problem in the past with this band, the lyrics are up front and center, and they're centered around devotion to Christ. Uh, it, that just isn't what I'm all about, and I find it hard to sit down and listen to this record over and over, despite how good it is as heavy rock and heavy metal kind of meeting at the kind of 1979 to 1982 kind of era, um, because it really does bend the knee for Jesus, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit through it that many times, so it is excellent music, and I will hand it to them that they've improved over the years in every way. And now I think this is the album where they arrive upon a much more defined Witch Hazel sound. And I think that'll seem funny if you really love their second album, which is kind of where they got more notice. This album is more their own. It still has those hallmarks. It still has that classic shooting for a kind of a retro sound, but it is some of their best songwriting and some of their most persistent personality coming through, so that we can't just casually point to Thin Lizzy, like Chinatown and a bit of Wishbone Ash and be done with it. So there's more to it. And if you don't mind the devotion to Christianity, there's some great music there to enjoy. Journey to the Darkest Kingdom is the latest full length from the Cryptic, and in general, this Brazilian band have stepped up in kind of every way. I think this album is it's enormous at 70 minutes. It's immersive in its sound, and the production is very fine. It is it's I wouldn't call it a symphonic black metal record, but it is the kind of thing that would only exist beyond the era of keyboard forward black metal from Scandinavia. And I say that because this is more of like a celestial atmospheric feeling. It is not necessarily limbic art, and it's not necessarily like lunar aurora in the kind of tuneful focus sense, but a fan of Odium would get what I'm talking about, where it isn't led by a charge of horns necessarily, but celestial ambiance that really hovers over everything. So anyway, the gist of it is that the atmosphere is very effective for this record. The long form pieces range from like 8 to 12 minutes on average, and there's nothing to not like here. I just think that they could have used more interjections of riffs. It's a sort of a combination that works so well on classic records that they really are carrying a torch for here, but they don't quite bring the riff craft that I want from that reference. So they're doing it their own way, and they're doing a great job with it. This is, I would say, their best record to date, and it goes a lot further than any expectations I had going in beyond their last EP. So big recommendation for this one, and definitely check it out. The Stoner Side of Doom is the debut full length from Hemplifier, a Malta based stoner sludge doom metal band who really do come from kind of the sleep side of things, and this is a very uncomplicated record. It's just that there's a few riffs on each song. They drag you through them for about 6 minutes each, and occasionally cool things happen. Not very often. I think that the vocals are very sparse and spastic, kind of strange. They don't really carry a tune in the slightest throughout this whole thing. And then when they do, it doesn't come together as a song so much as like a collection of riffs that are just okay. The final song, Weedcraft, is a better version of what they do throughout the album. It does reach that sort of early cathedral, kind of almost funeral doom speed, strange, that sort of has that traditional doom metal feeling to it as well. So um, maybe that was an accident and a happy one, but overall, kind of a strange record, and it was worth listening to, but maybe just once or twice. So, if you were a fan of heavy music in general in the late 90s and the early 2000s, you probably at least remember Bongzilla from advertisements as something that stood out on the Relapse roster. Not so much in terms of the type of sludge it was, but more in terms of it being a stoner music forward image and sound. Now, really, their sound doesn't really belong in the stoner rock vernacular so directly as it does in the classic sludge metal arena. This is a band that sort of got inspired in the early 90s with classic sludge and doom metal, and their sound is still that. It's much more along the lines of like old Grief and Buzz Oven Records, and sort of the mid 90s point of breakthrough for sludge metal, where a lot more bands were doing more than just what I Hate God was doing. So that's still kind of their sound. They still have the aggressive vocals and kind of the slower doom metal influenced riffs that kind of roll through the whole thing. But they had a long break in between records, about 15 years, and the two that have come out, including Dab City, have focused on just telling, like kind of the usual telling stories, playing samples, and now jamming a little bit more often. And that's kind of the big thing about this record is that they're hitting more of a jammed feeling more often. It's more representative of their live show anyway, and it makes for some of the better songs on this record, which really, it's just kind of classic Bongzilla. I prefer their first record where they were most focused, but if you liked everything that came after that, this fits in really well. Um, so I didn't really like the album art and all that, but I enjoyed remembering what this band was and recalling that early era of sludge metal that I like more than most anything that came afterwards. So worth a listen. Crownless King of a Dismal Dark Empire actually came out in 2022 as a tape, very late 2022, and now it's finally getting its vinyl and CD and all those issues now. It comes from Finnish musician Virter, who put out a ton of demo tapes and cassettes in general between 2021 and 2022, and very much in the style of earlier Graveland, Satanic Warmaster, Sargeist, kind of Finnish and Polish black metal, but from a very early 90s old school black metal feeling. And he keeps it very sparse, aggressive, but tuneful, and with a little bit of keyboards throughout this album, which help it feel musical, but also mystic, distant, that early 90s feeling that is dark and medieval and whatnot. So, very simple sound, very simple implementation of it with a very hollow drum sound and sort of a corridor of aggressive old school black metal, basically. So, we're checking out. I think that I don't think all of his records are quite worth the vinyl treatment, but if there was one, this would probably be it. It is kind of his best showing so far. So, worth checking out. finally, we can just kind of rip through all these and land on Bone Potion, which is a Maryland-based psychedelic doom project from Dave Keyser, who he's just started this project, and he started it out by putting out a bunch of singles, which are about one or two songs, which focus on a theme which is centered around mountain climbing, mountain worship, as it were, and mostly an outlet for riffs in the doom metal persuasion, with some sludge and psychedelic doom influences in there too. So the focus so far has been on some harmonized leads, a lot of very effective riffcraft, and there aren't that many songs to really pull descriptions from, but these are the best yet. There's two songs here, and I kind of default to Candlemass for anything that kind of wanders in a regal sort of way with a lead-driven sound, but there is a sludge metal and psychedelic doom metal influence in there that keeps it interesting. The reason I mention this at all is because it is memorable. It's the two songs not only kind of bleed into each other in an effective way, but they're memorable as an experience. And when left on repeat, I was enjoying this. I think it sounds great. I think Dan Lowndes of Resonant Sound mixed it, and I forget where they recorded it, but it's a really promising professional sound to sort of introduce the band with if you haven't heard of them, and just a good showing overall from the guy. I think he's done a great job here in terms of like the guitar interest and just putting out a catchy song that's worth checking out.